Good morning.
In unison, good morning, Your Honor.
Raise your right hand. Face the clerk.
I do. Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record. Francin Contreras. Francin Contreras. Thank you.
Good morning, Miss Contreras. Were you known by another name at one point?
Francin Orozco.
Okay, and Contreras is
My married name.
your married name, so you were married since then?
Yes.
Alright, and have you worked at Neverland Valley Ranch?
Yes.
When did you first start working there?
I believe it was 91, 92. I'm not sure. 91.
In 1991. And how long did you work there?
About 2 years.
How are you presently employed?
I'm at Foods Company, Lompoc, California, lead cashier.
Alright, now, in the time period of 1991 and 92, did you have occasion to work with Adrian McManus?
Yes.
Can you describe your relationship with Ms. McManus?
A good friend at that time.
And at that time, did you go to her house, she go to your house?
Yes.
Did you know her husband?
Yes.
Alright, did you remain friends after you stopped working at Neverland Ranch?
For a bit.
Okay, during the time that you knew Ms. McManus, did she ever make any statements to you whatsoever with regard to the molestation charges against or accusations against Mr. Jackson back at that time, in 1993?
Never.
What did she tell you, if anything? You have to sit forward, first of all, a little bit, because that microphone.
Oh, sorry.
Everybody has that problem. You just have to talk into the microphone.
All right.
Did she say anything one way or the other about the charges, and about Mr. Jackson?
Never. She always talked good about him.
Alright, now, at one point, were you aware that she filed a lawsuit against Mr. Jackson?
That's when I didn't talk to her no more. We didn't see each other.
Alright, what was? Did you talk to her at some point right at the end, right when that breakup occurred? Did she tell you what she was doing with her lawsuit, if anything?
She just, meaning, I really don't know what you mean.
Okay, did she talk to you about her lawsuit? You say you stopped seeing her at some point after she filed the lawsuit, right?
Right.
Okay, did she tell you why she was filing a lawsuit?
No.
Alright, now, did you visit the house of Mr. and Mrs. McManus?
Yes.
Where did they live?
In Santa Maria.
And did you visit there while Ms. McManus was working for Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
What did you observe at her house?
In all her rooms?
Yeah, let's talk about, was there a room that had some
Yes.
Michael Jackson items? Can you tell us about that?
She had hats that belonged to Mr. Jackson. Pajamas. Watches. T-shirts. Items that belonged to the ranch.
Okay, now, did you ever see her take items from the ranch?
Yeah.
And how did she do that?
In a laundry basket. She used to take home Mr. Jackson's clothes. She said she was going to iron them. But there was, a hat underneath there, and you can't iron a hat.
Okay, was there an occasion where you all were asked to wrap Christmas presents for needy children?
Yes.
Sit a little closer. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Everybody has to do it. It's not comfortable. Sorry. What can you tell us about that?
We were sent home, because there was, lots of toys and gifts for the children. And we really couldn't do all the wrapping at the ranch, because it was quite a bit, so we were asked to take some of the toys home to wrap, and bring them back, because they didn't belong to us. And I noticed that Adrian had kept some super soakers and other items of toys for her son.
Alright, okay, very well. I have no further questions.
I'm sorry, is it Miss Contreras or Mrs. Orozco?
Contreras.
Miss Contreras, was it more than one occasion that you saw Adrian McManus taking a laundry basket with items home?
Yes.
Was that a fairly regular occurrence?
Yes.
And would she stop to show you the items that she had in the laundry basket?
She didn't stop,
So she wasn't showing you what she had and what she was taking home.
I seen them. We were walking together out to her car.
Alright. And she would have it in a laundry basket covered with items, but you would, nonetheless, see the items because you were looking through them?
No.
You understood at the time that she was stealing at that time?
No. I thought she was taking them home to iron.
She was taking a hat home to iron?
That's what I said before. How could you iron a hat?
That's my question to you. Did you see on each of the occasions that she took items home to iron, she had items that you believed that she was stealing?
No. She was taking them home to iron.
Alright. On only one occasion did she take home an item that you believed she was stealing?
No, because we were taking toys home. All of us were, to wrap. And they were supposed to be returned.
I'm asking questions specifically about the occasions when you saw her bringing items in a laundry basket covered with laundry.
Right.
Now, she did take items home to iron that were Mr. Jackson's items and she would bring them back. Is that right?
I don't know if she brought them back. I didn't see her bring them back.
Was that part of her job as you understood it?
To take them home and iron, yes.
It was part of her job to take items that were, in fact, Mr. Jackson's personal clothing, to iron them for Mr. Jackson, and return them ironed to Mr. Jackson. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And she did that on a fairly regular basis?
Yes.
She would work at home doing ironing for Mr. Jackson?
I never seen her ironing them, so I couldn't tell you, sir.
She would take it. A laundry basket with his clothing to iron and she would tell you that that's what she was doing.
Yes.
You have no reason to believe she wasn't bringing them back, is that right?
Right.
On one occasion you saw a felt hat that didn't need ironing?
Yes. I don't know what she was doing. She could have took it home to mend. I have no idea, sir.
She could have mended it and brought it back the next day?
I suppose so.
Did you ever ask her about that?
Nope.
Did you ever ask her about the super soakers that were in there?
No.
Miss Contreras, did you go to work for Mervyn's after you left Neverland?
Yes, I did.
Did you get fired from Mervyn's for stealing?
No.
Were you prosecuted for stealing from Mervyn's?
No, it was trespassing.
Well, you were prosecuted for stealing, is that right?
No, sir, it was trespassing.
You were trespassing in the store that you were working in.
No, sir, no.
Were you not working in there at the time?
Yes, I was.
You were prosecuted for trespassing in a store that you were working in?
No, sir.
Were you ordered by the court to make restitution to Mervyn's?
I'm going to object, Your Honor, as to relevance.
Sustained.
I have no further questions.
At the McManus residence, was there a particular room that was dedicated to the Michael Jackson?
Objection. Exceeding the scope of the cross-examination.
That's true. Did you want to reopen that?
Well, let me ask it a different way. The court may see where I'm going. Whether or not you saw things in the laundry basket, did you see things from the ranch in Ms. McManus's house?
Yes, sir.
And were they displayed in some fashion?
Yes.
All right, okay. No further questions.
No questions.
Thank you. You may step down.
Call Gayle Goforth.
Would counsel approach on this? While she's coming in, counsel approach. The district attorney filed an in limine statement. Discussion held off the record at sidebar. Good morning. I'm going to ask you to face the clerk here. Raise your right hand. Go ahead.
I do.
Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
My name is Gayle Goforth. Gayle. Last name, Goforth.
Thank you.
Miss Goforth, we're just going to ask you to sit there a minute. I know you don't know what to expect, but I was just talking to the attorneys here, and I'm going to talk to them for a second before we do anything.
Okay.
To the attorneys, come forward. Discussion held off the record at sidebar.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Do you know the gentleman seated right here?
Yes, I do.
Who is that?
Michael Jackson.
All right. And how long have you known Mr. Jackson?
I need you to speak right into the microphone.
Sorry. I became employed at Neverland Valley Ranch in 1989.
All right. Now, every single witness, even those with louder voices than yours, has to sit right up to that microphone. For some reason it's a little uncomfortable there. So just try to project. You have a soft voice to start with. Okay, so you started working in 1989. And what was your job when you started there?
I was a housekeeper.
And did you eventually attain a different position?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
I became supervisor of housekeeping.
All right. And when did you become supervisor of housekeeping?
In 1990.
Now, did you know Adrian McManus?
Yes, I did.
Did you know Ralph Chacon?
Yes, I did.
Did you know Qasim Abdul?
Yes, I did.
Were they also employees at the ranch?
Yes, they were.
Were any of them working under you?
Adrian was.
Ms. McManus was on the housekeeping staff, is that correct?
Yes, she was.
And you were at that time the head of housekeeping?
Yes, I was.
What was her assignment when she first started to work for you?
She was a housekeeper.
Did she eventually get a new designation?
Yes, she did.
And what was that?
She became, a caretaker of Mr. Jackson's room.
All right. Now, when you say, Mr. Jackson's room, what are you talking about?
Primarily cleaning his room and taking care of his personal items.
All right. Now, first of all, if you'd like some water, you can pour yourself some there.
Okay, thank you.
All right. When you say, his room, we're talking about the suite that we've all heard about that has the 2 floors and so on?
Yes.
And part of her responsibilities were to make sure that the place was clean, I take it.
Yes.
And she also was responsible for making sure that his laundry was done, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, did you have facilities at the ranch to do laundry?
Yes, we did.
And during that period of time, and perhaps today, but during that period of time, was the laundry done at the ranch?
Some of it was. A lot of the things were sent to the dry cleaners.
I'm sorry, not dry cleaning, but the actual laundry, if you were going to wash sheets or wash clothing that did not need to be dry cleaned.
Yes.
And could it be ironed there?
Yes.
You had a room to do that in, is that correct?
Yes, we had a laundry room.
All right. Was it part of Ms. McManus's duties to take clothing home, Mr. Jackson's clothing home, to iron it?
Not necessarily.
Okay. And during that period of time when, can you tell us when Ms. McManus was there, to the best of your recollection? Let me withdraw that. Why don't you just tell us when she was taking care of Mr. Jackson's room?
I believe she started cleaning his room in, around 1990, early 1991.
Okay.
Until 1994.
All right. Now, in 1994, did Ms. McManus stop showing up for work?
Yes, she did.
Do you recall roughly when that was?
I don't remember exactly when.
Sometime in 1994, though?
Yes.
And the last time, when I say, the last time, she stopped showing up for work and then she just never came back, is that correct?
That's correct.
Before that happened, do you recall her taking any leave or being absent from work?
A lot, yes.
And was Ms. McManus? What was her attitude towards her position? Do you recall?
Oh, gosh. Well, she changed, when she was a housekeeper, when she became, to take care of Mr. Jackson's room, she changed her attitude.
And what did her attitude change to?
All object as speculative and irrelevant.
Overruled. You may answer.
I can answer?
Yes.
Like she was above everybody.
Was she a hard worker?
All object as irrelevant.
I'll withdraw it. All right. Now, let me move ahead. When did you stop working at the ranch?
In 2002.
All right. Were you at the ranch at the time the Arvizo family came to visit?
Yes, I was.
And do you remember? What do you remember about the Arvizo family?
They were at their first time that they came. They were very concerned about their son's health.
Okay, and that was Gavin?
Yes.
And he was not doing well at that time?
No, he wasn't.
How many times did you see the Arvizo family at the ranch before you left your employment there?
The first time I saw the whole family was their first arrival. Thereafter, the father and the two boys came back. I would say, maybe 4 or 5 times.
Okay, so the first time the whole family was there, that means the mother was there as well, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Do you remember her name?
Janet.
Did you have any interaction with Janet Arvizo?
Yes, I did.
And what interaction did you have?
Shortly after their arrival, she started talking to me about being concerned about her son's health, and that they were having money problems, and that she asked me if I would give her a job at the ranch.
And what was your response to that?
I told her that she needed to be more concerned about her son and that it was a long ways to.
I'm going to object to the response as hearsay.
Sustained.
And irrelevant. Move to strike.
Stricken.
All right, not for the truth of the matter, Your Honor, but for the purpose of the response, if I may.
The response that Janet makes to her statement?
Yes, that's correct.
All right.
Did you say anything specifically about the distance between her home and the ranch?
Yes, I did.
And what did Janet Arvizo say in response to that?
She told me she would move to the valley in order to be closer to the ranch.
When you say, the valley, you mean the Santa Ynez Valley.
Yes, I do.
Now, excuse me, I'm sorry. Going back to the entire time that you worked at the ranch, did you have occasion to see Mr. Jackson drink alcohol?
A few occasions.
All right, and roughly, let's put it this way. When did you see him drink? What occasions would you see him drink alcohol?
At mealtime, dinnertime.
Okay, now, when you, at some point during this period of time, or from time to time, you actually took care of Mr. Jackson's room as well, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And so you were one of the staff people who was allowed to go into his room to straighten it up or do whatever needed to be done, is that correct?
That's correct.
And also to supervise people who would be doing that, is that right?
Yes.
All right. Did you ever see any bottles of alcohol or other evidence of alcohol strewn about? Can you explain what you might see?
I don't recall.
Okay, so you might see a glass or something, but you wouldn't see alcohol just lying around his room.
No.
All right, and let me also ask you about Mr. Jackson and his personal behavior. Can you describe his behavior as far as being outgoing or shy?
I'm going to object as irrelevant, Your Honor, and vague.
Sustained.
On vague?
Both.
Both? Okay. Did you have any occasion to observe whether or not Mr. Jackson would change his clothes in front of anyone? For instance, if you were in the room cleaning, would he be changing his clothes in there?
Judge, that's irrelevant as to whether he would change his clothes in her presence.
Sustained.
All right. Were there occasions where you came in and Mr. Jackson might be in the process of changing his clothes, changing a shirt or something?
No, he was very private.
All right, okay. I have no further questions.
Ms. Goforth, you were recently interviewed by an investigator for the defense, is that correct?
Yes, I was.
And you were asked questions about that conversation that you had with Janet Arvizo, is that right?
Yes, I was.
Now, that conversation that you had with Janet Arvizo was approximately August of 2000, was it?
I don't recall exactly, no.
When did you leave Neverland Ranch?
I left in 2002.
Alright, you only saw Janet Arvizo on one single occasion when she was at Neverland, is that right?
One occasion, yes.
And she was there with her husband and her 3 children, is that correct?
That's correct.
They were there for 1 night, 2 nights?
They were there for a couple of days.
Couple days? Did you interact with her on more than one occasion during that time?
Well, yes.
Now, you told the investigator for Mr. Jackson not that she was prepared to move to the valley, but that she was prepared to sleep in her car outside Neverland, is that right?
Yes.
Did you just change it to say that she was prepared to live in the valley?
Objection. Argumentative.
Sustained.
No, I wasn't able to complete my.
Just a moment. Just a moment. I sustained the objection. Next question.
Now, the statement that you gave was that she was prepared to sleep in her car right outside the doors to Neverland. Is that right?
Yes.
Alright. Now, did you ask her if she had a car?
She stated that she didn't even have a car and that they were living in separate quarters.
Alright, so she told you she didn't have a car but she would sleep in the car she didn't have outside the ranch?
Objection. Argumentative.
Sustained.
Ma'am, what exactly did she tell you? Did she tell you she had a car?
No, she didn't say that she had a car.
She told you she was going to get a car?
No, she didn't say that. She said that, the conversation was, she asked me if she could have a job at Neverland. I told her that it was a long ways from. I assumed that they lived in the Los Angeles area. And it was a long ways to come. She said that she would move to the valley in order to be closer to the ranch. And I told her that the rents and that were very expensive in the area. Just trying to dissuade her from this. And she said, well, I'll come and I'll sleep in my car if I have to. I just need money. I need to work.
Go ahead.
I need a job. I need to work. We're living in separate quarters, and we need the money. Gavin's very sick, to that effect.
Alright, did you take a job application to give her?
No, I did not.
Alright, you decided at that time that she wasn't qualified to clean rooms at Neverland?
Objection. Argumentative.
Sustained.
Did you make a determination as to why she shouldn't work at Neverland?
Well, I just saw her being a guest and everything, that it wasn't appropriate to. I had several guests come to the ranch and ask. Everybody thought it was fun to work at the ranch. And.
But she asked specifically for a job as a maid, is that right?
Yes, she did.
About that time that job made about what, $8 an hour?
Yes.
You knew, did you not, that she, in fact, had a job, was working in Los Angeles at the time?
No, I did not.
And in fact, she had an apartment at that time?
I didn't know. My job was not to stand and carry conversations with the guests and that. I was trying to dissuade her from, and get away, out of the conversation.
Miss Goforth, your job at Neverland Ranch ended when?
In 2002.
And that ended because you were being disciplined for stealing, is that right? Is that right?
Objection. Lack of foundation.
We're going to get there.
And move to strike counsel's remarks.
Sustained.
Were you, in fact, suspended from your job because you were taking things that you weren't entitled to take?
I was suspended from my job over the sale of some furniture that I thought was allowed to be done. I was just doing what I was told by another party.
Alright, so you took some items from Neverland and they then accused you of taking it without the permission of the owner, is that right?
I didn't personally take the items.
Somebody else took them and you sold them?
I didn't sell them. It was arrangements that were made through someone else.
And ultimately who made the decision to discipline you for that?
I believe Mr. Jackson.
Alright, and thereafter, you terminated your position voluntarily, is that right?
That's correct.
Because you were offended as to how you were treated.
Yes, I was.
In fact, there's a fair amount of controversy at Neverland about who can take what and when they can take it, is that right?
Objection. Vague and argumentative.
Overruled. You may answer.
Please answer the question.
Could you repeat the question?
Could the reporter read that back?
I'll have the reporter read it back.
In fact, there's a fair amount of controversy at Neverland about who can take what and when they can take it, is that right?
I don't believe so. I believe that no one should take anything at any time without Mr. Jackson's permission.
And, all right, but a lot of people have been accused of taking things from Neverland, is that right?
Objection. Vague as to time and.
Sustained.
You've actually turned in people for taking things at Neverland, haven't you?
No.
You've never turned in people for taking things at Neverland?
Not personally myself, no.
Didn't you turn in Ramon Velasco for taking something at Neverland?
No, I did not.
And you never went back to work at Neverland after that, is that correct?
That's correct.
No further questions.
Alright, with regard to this business about selling items from Neverland, did you ever sell anything from Neverland for your own personal benefit?
I did not.
Was there somebody else who was in a position higher than yours who directed that certain items be sold?
Yes, there was.
And were they being sold for your benefit?
No.
They were being sold for the benefit of the ranch?
Yes, they were.
And the problem was that apparently.
Objection. Leading.
That's true. Let me withdraw the beginning of that. I didn't get it out. But it would have been leading, I agree. What was the problem that gave rise to the people involved in selling these items eventually being disciplined in some way or being reprimanded?
That's vague and compound.
Overruled. You may answer.
Apparently, Mr. Jackson didn't want the furniture sold.
Okay. Were the proceeds of the sale intended to go to Mr. Jackson and to the ranch?
For the ranch, yes.
Okay. So nobody was stealing anything, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Can we assume you told Mr. Jackson all the things you just told us about this incident?
No, I did not.
You did not? Did you have any conversation with Mr. Jackson thereafter?
No, I did not.
How did you find out that it was Mr. Jackson who disciplined you?
I assumed that it was. I didn't know that for a fact.
Did you tell anybody about what had happened?
No, I immediately left the ranch.
No further questions.
And I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down. Call your next witness.
Call Violet Silva.
Please remain standing. Face the clerk here and raise your right hand.
Yes.
Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
Violet Gaitan Silva. Violet, V-I-O-L-E-T. Gaitan, G-A-I-T-A-N. Silva, S-I-L-V-A.
Thank you.
I'll let you get some water there first. So take your time.
Thank you.
Alright, Miss Silva. How are you employed?
I'm employed by Neverland Ranch as a safety coordinator at this time.
Okay, now, everybody's having this problem in this courtroom. You have to sit real close.
Okay.
It's not, there we go. That might help. And then when the air conditioner is on, it makes it a little harder to hear.
All right.
So repeat that again, please.
I am employed by Neverland Ranch as a safety coordinator at this time.
And where is your office?
My office is located in the administration building.
Where is the administration building with respect to the ranch house? I mean, to the actual house, Mr. Jackson's house.
It's southwest approximately less than a quarter mile.
Is it up on a hill?
Yes.
Alright, and is it outside the manicured grounds of Neverland?
I would say the immediate grounds, yes.
Not to say the administration area isn't manicured, but there is a place that's all grass and pastures and so on, right?
Yes.
And it's outside of that, correct?
Correct.
Can you describe the kind of structure that houses the administrative offices?
It's a converted barn. And it has one large office area with a conference area. It has two smaller offices. It also stations a fire engine in the bay and one other small office and 3 bathrooms, and some storage areas.
Okay, so let's start with the fire truck. That's the fire station as it were, is that correct?
The fire brush truck is located in the administration building.
Alright, so, and at this time there's one fire truck, is that right?
Yes, it's a brush truck.
And on prior occasions, how many fire trucks have been there?
We've had as many as 2.
Alright, now, when you talk about the brush truck, is it a fully outfitted fire truck?
Yes.
Alright, and do you have trained fire personnel to man or staff, I should say, the fire truck?
Yes. We have trained firefighter, EMTs.
You said EMTs?
EMTs, yes.
I'm having a little trouble hearing at the end of your sentences.
Okay.
Alright, now, the administrative office is. You talked about a number of offices being in there. You have an actual executive office there right now, is that correct?
Yes. I share it with the fire supervisor at this time.
Alright, and then there's a staff area where an administrative assistant sits, is that right?
Yes, and the ranch manager.
Alright, and then there's a separate office for the ranch manager, or the ranch manager is out.
No, they have separate offices.
Okay, at the current time, who is the administrative assistant up there?
Tracy Chapman.
And does she have a large phone?
Yes.
Okay, now, in the years, did I ask you when you started there?
No.
I think I did. Okay, when did you start working there?
July 1st, 1991.
We'll go back over what you've done there in a minute.
Okay.
But in the years you've been there, have you had occasion to see the different phones throughout the ranch?
Yes.
Alright, and are there some regular, smaller handset phones throughout the ranch?
Yes.
Is the main phone in the administrative office larger than those phones?
Yes. There's a regular small phone and there's also a larger console type of phone.
Would that be the main phone for the phone system?
No, it's not.
Alright, where is the main phone?
The calls are mostly taken through the security gate, and also at Miss Chapman's desk, depending on which number the person is calling.
When I said, main phone, I was asking about the equipment. But you're saying that calls are answered at some of the smaller handsets, is that correct?
Yes.
And one of the places where calls are routinely answered is the front gate?
Yes.
And the other would be at Miss Chapman's desk?
Yes.
Alright, the ranch manager. Who's the ranch manager at the present time?
Joe Marcus.
And does he have an office there in the same administrative building?
Yes.
When did you obtain the position that you have now?
November of 2004.
Let's go back to when you started at the ranch. And actually, before you started at the ranch, did you have any particular training and experience?
I had graduated from Allen Hancock Police Academy in 1989, December. And shortly after, 91, I applied for a position out at the ranch as a security officer, which I started July 1st of 91.
Alright, so you went to the Post Academy?
Yes.
Police Officer Training Academy, correct?
Yes.
Did you receive the certificate?
I graduated but I did not receive the certificate, because I did not work full-time as a police officer. So I guess my answer would be no to that. I did not receive the post certificate.
So you did the education and the training through Allen Hancock, but you didn't do the in-service training as a police officer, is that correct?
Correct.
Alright, and do you consider yourself to be a peace officer or a police officer?
No.
Alright, and have you ever?
No.
Alright, so you went to work as a security guard at the ranch.
Yes.
In 1991, correct?
Yes.
Did the ranch have a security staff? Well, let's start with that. You weren't the only person?
No.
Okay, and was the staff organized according to rank?
Yes.
Who was the chief of security at that time? Do you recall?
Terry Cooney.
And between 1991 and 2004, did you continuously work in the security department?
Yes.
Can you tell us briefly how you progressed through the department?
In October of 91, I was promoted to a relief supervisor position, which would carry the rank of corporal. And in January of 94, I believe, I was promoted to a full-time shift supervisor, which has the rank of sergeant. In May of 97, I was promoted to the chief's position of security. And in June of 98, I assumed the fire chief position as well.
Alright, and you? When you were finally moved into this other administrative position, as of that time in 2004, you were the chief of both the security and the fire department. Is that correct?
Yes.
Alright, now, you know Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
Correct? Do you know Mr. Jackson well?
I would say so.
Alright, do you spend, in the course of your employment, do you spend a lot of time talking with Mr. Jackson?
No.
Alright, and can you explain what the policy is for employees at the ranch as far as having contact with Mr. Jackson?
Object as immaterial, Your Honor.
Overruled. You may answer. You may answer.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
I can have it read back.
Thank you.
All right, and can you explain what the policy is for employees at the ranch as far as having contact with Mr. Jackson?
Our contact is limited to him making requests. And other than that, if we have any concerns about the operation of the ranch, we channel those through the ranch manager.
Now, that policy would pertain to security, correct?
Yes.
It would pertain to fire, is that right?
Yes.
Did it pertain to the other departments as well?
Yes.
Okay, so housekeeping?
Yes.
The zoo?
Yes.
Grounds or maintenance?
Yes.
Did I leave any out?
There's a few.
Okay, there's some more. But all of the different units out there have their own chain of command, as it were. Is that correct?
Correct. There's employees, a department head for each department, and each department is directly supervised by the ranch manager.
And who is the ranch manager at the current time? Did I ask you that?
Yes. Joe Marcus.
So if somebody in your department, as the chief of security, if somebody in your department had some question about procedure or how things ought to be done, where would you expect them to go?
I expect them to immediately go to their shift supervisor, to whoever the chief is at the time. If I was in charge, then to me. If I couldn't answer the question, then I would go to Mr. Marcus with a question.
Alright, did you ever sit down with Mr. Jackson and ask him how he'd like to have security taken care of at the ranch?
No, but if he had a suggestion, he sure would let me know.
Okay, when you made policy decisions about security, would you discuss those with Joe Marcus or with somebody else, or how would you do that?
I would discuss those with Mr. Marcus.
Alright.
And my shift supervisors as well.
Now, you said that Mr. Jackson would let you know. Did Mr. Jackson from time to time let people know that he thought something ought to be done at the ranch?
Yes.
Okay, and would the staff attempt to fulfill those requests?
Yes.
Alright, in all the time that you were there, did Mr. Jackson ever ask you to do anything that you thought was inappropriate?
No.
Alright, now, by the way, you've come here pursuant to a subpoena, is that correct?
Yes.
And you also interviewed with law enforcement, is that correct?
Yes.
And you have told both sides that you were going to tell the truth to both sides no matter what, is that correct?
Yes.
Is that your intention, to tell the truth here on the stand?
Absolutely.
Now, in the course of the time that you worked there, I asked you if Mr. Jackson ever asked you to do anything that was inappropriate. During the course of the time that you worked at the ranch, did you ever observe anything that appeared to you to be illegal or inappropriate?
No.
And if you had, what would you have done about it?
Well, I would have at the time taken into consideration what the action was and addressed it appropriately.
Now, before you were a chief of security, if you saw anything inappropriate or illegal, would you have reported it to a supervisor? Before you were chief of.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And again, you told us about the chain of command so.
Yes.
And as the chief of security, if you saw anything inappropriate or illegal, what would you have done? Who would you have reported it to?
I would have followed my chain of command, and notified my supervisor, who was Joe Marcus.
Alright, now, during the course of the time that you worked in security and you've been the chief of security, in fact, I'm really drawing on that experience as your involvement in security there, whatever rank you had during the period of time. What would happen if anybody in security observed something? Let's say a golf cart accident. We've heard about those. What would happen?
Well, we would first immediately make sure, whoever the driver was, make sure they weren't injured. That would be our first concern. If they were, then we would attend to that. Afterwards, if there was no injury or we took care of the injury, then we would either make sure that the vehicle, the cart, whatever it was still roadworthy. If it was not, we would remove it and take it to the mechanic's shop and we would make a report as well. And depending on why it happened, if it was deemed necessary, we would take that privilege away from that person if they weren't handling the cart properly.
Alright, let's start with the report. Is there a formal reporting system that has been in place at the ranch since you started there as a security officer?
Yes.
And can you explain what that is?
Well, depending on the incident or the severity of it, if it's a medical incident, then a report is made, regardless of how minor or insignificant it may seem. If it's a damage report, we will do the same. If we consider that there may be a hazard involved, then we address the hazard as well. So, and just write down a line, if there's a theft, if there's something missing, if we have a trespasser. It could be anything.
Alright, now, with regard to the different kinds of reports you talked about, there are medical reports. There's actually a form to make a medical report, is that correct?
Yes.
And is that filled out every time the EMTs are called to attend to somebody who might be injured?
Yes.
Alright, now, you said there's EMTs. Firefighters, EMTs. Do you generally have an EMT on the property at all times?
We try to make sure that that's covered. It's a priority for us. So we do.
If anybody is injured anywhere on the ranch, whether it's an employee, a guest, Mr. Jackson, you have somebody there who can give first aid.
Yes.
If somebody is injured, do the EMTs make the final call as to whether or not any further medical assistance is needed?
They'll make the assessment, but a patient always has the right to refuse treatment. So if that's what they do, then we can just ask them to, seek further treatment. If not, then that's where it stops. If we feel they absolutely need to go, in the event of a work injury, then they're required to go.
Alright, now, when you say, go, we're talking about going to the local hospital or getting a doctor.
Correct. Or call whatever means is necessary, whether it's ambulance or outside of our department with county fire.
And have you had occasion at times to actually call in ambulances to the ranch?
Yes.
Even, I think, a medical helicopter evacuation?
Yes.
I'm going to object as immaterial and irrelevant, Your Honor.
Do you have a...
That was actually the last question in that area. But it does tie into some other evidence.
All right, I'll overrule the objection.
Alright. Now, you indicated that in addition to the medical reports, you also have reports with regard to property damage, correct?
Yes.
And then you indicated that there are occasions where a guest, let me withdraw that. What happens if a guest is not being safe with some of the equipment?
Well, then we temporarily give them a cooling off time, or we would remove the equipment from them.
And why would you do that?
For their safety.
Now, is one of the concerns in your department safety of the guests?
Yes.
Does that pertain to adults or children or both?
Both.
And how is that concern for safety implemented in your department?
Well, when they're initially given a cart to drive, or a vehicle, or a quad runner, we give them instructions on how to operate the equipment safely. On occasion it does happen where they get a little rambunctious and we feel like maybe they can't control it properly. Then we give them a warning, and advise them again of the proper use of the equipment. And if they continue to either cause damage to the cart or other things, then we usually pull the equipment.
Now, do you have to ask Mr. Jackson first before you do that?
No.
And if you see kids who are not being supervised by their parents on the ranch, does security try to keep? Let's put it this way. Is there any additional attention given to those kids by security?
Well, I would say that's just our priority in general. So, it's what we're doing there. So it's not, we don't have heightened awareness. It's just what we are trained to do and what we're there for. So that's a constant regardless of whether their parents are there or not.
So if you see kids, whether the parents are there or not, if you see kids riding the carts and you think, in the morning you saw somebody going a little fast, is security going to tend to watch that kid a little more closely?
Sure.
Alright, do you sometimes make entries in the gate logs?
Yes.
Now, we've seen something about gate logs, so we don't have to absolutely go back to square one, but can you describe the purpose of the gate logs and how they're kept?
The purpose of the gate logs is we have 3 different sheets, and it's evolved over time, depending on what our needs are for our department. It's mainly used to document in and out times for our employees, contractors, guests' arrival. It also documents our own activity on the ranch as far as our work that we do. So if we have to refer back to a time or a directive that is given to us, we can refer back to it.
How many security officers are on duty generally? Let's say in recent years, in the 2000s, how many security officers would be on duty at any given time during the day?
We try for 4. 4 is a good number for us.
Alright, would that be 24 hours a day?
Yes.
And can you describe what the duties of the 4 different officers would be?
Well, they would come in and get whatever equipment they need. They would either report to 3 different posts that we have, which is at the front gate, the main house, or a mobile patrol. Their duties vary at each of the stations. The main gate is, primarily their function is to ask guests, authorize guests or contractors. They also dispatch a request from the owner or another department that needs something. We answer the phones. A lot of phone calls come through there after hours as well, so.
So you generally have 1 officer mobile, alright? 1 in the gatehouse, and where would the other 2 be?
1 would be at the house and hopefully the other one would be a supervisor. So most of the times it would be a supervisor.
You talked about the front gate. There's a gatehouse there, is that correct?
Yes.
And can you describe that building, about how big it is?
The building is probably about 15 square feet. It has a small eating area, a desk area, a bathroom, has a phone. TV.
Okay, I am thinking 15 square feet, that's kind of small.
It works.
Okay.
It's all we need.
Alright, so there's a desk in there, is that correct?
Yes.
And there's a bathroom, is that right?
Yes.
And there's an area where you can sit and watch a TV, correct?
Yes.
Now, during the course of the shift or during the course of a day. Let's put it this way. During the day, how many shifts are there for security?
We work a 12-hour shift, so we have 2 shifts, starting from 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., from 6 p.m. to 6:30 a.m.
Alright, and I take it you have the required breaks, lunch breaks and other breaks, in the middle of that shift?
Yes.
Now, in addition to security, do you have fire on duty?
Yes.
And how many fire people do you have?
How the department is worked is that our firefighters do security work. So most of them, or the majority of our security officers, are firefighter, EMTs.
So they also have the EMT training?
Yes.
Did that change? Did you have a separate fire staff at one time?
Yes. From the time I was first hired in 91, the security department was separate from the fire department. And in 98, June 98, when I assumed the fire chief duties, our department was combined at that time.
By the way, Brian Barron, do you know that name?
Yes.
Do you know Brian Barron?
Yes, I do.
And is he a police officer?
Yes.
Do you recall him working at the ranch?
Yes.
At the time he worked at the ranch, was it known to everybody in the security department that he was, in fact, a sworn peace officer?
Yes.
Object. Calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Now, going back to the front gate issue, where are the gate logs actually kept during the day?
During the day, the gate logs are kept there, and they're actually kept there for the entire week. And on Monday morning, they're picked up.
And where do they go after that?
They go to the administration office.
And the administration office, again, is the building up on the hill?
Yes.
Alright, now, there's been discussion about a security office at the end of the building that has the garage, Mr. Jackson's office, and then it has the video library upstairs.
Yes.
Can you describe that security office?
It has 2 separate rooms. The first office is approximately a 9 by 10 room. It has a desk, a computer, a counter space that holds our equipment and other things, like paper towels and napkins. The back area is with lockers and a table for eating and refrigerator and microwave.
Alright, now, is this a staff area?
Yes.
Alright, and this is part of that structure. Does it have a door that you enter from the outside or do you go inside that structure to enter?
No, you enter from the outside.
Alright, And the door that you enter is away from the house, is that correct?
Yes.
What is kept generally, in the 2003 time period, what is kept at that location?
At that location, excuse me, I forgot to mention, we do have a file cabinet there. We have a file cabinet that holds reports, our confidentiality agreements. We also have our gate logs in there for the entire year. They're housed in there, and whatever little bits of equipment that we may have in that storage.
Alright, now, you mentioned a confidentiality agreement. Can you explain what that is?
The confidentiality agreement is a 4-page contract that all guests or anyone entering Neverland reach, that read it, and they have to be over the age of 18. The contract, in a nutshell, is that you agree to keep your visit private and confidential.
Alright, is it designed to conceal illegal activity?
No.
What's the purpose of the confidentiality agreement?
The purpose of the agreement is to keep you from profiting from your experience there, selling to a magazine or any sort of media.
Okay, does it also include a provision that people are not supposed to take pictures while they're there on the ranch?
Yes, they agree to not use any sort of recording agreement.
And the purpose of that, not allowing any kind of recording equipment or pictures, is what?
Is to prevent probably the profit of sale as well.
So if you didn't have that as the chief of security, you would expect that pictures and recordings from the ranch would end up in the media, on television and in magazines otherwise. Is that true?
Yes.
Is any of that designed to conceal any kind of untoward or illegal activity?
No.
Alright, now, going back to how the security system is set up. I'm sorry. The security operation is set up, you mentioned the front gate, and we talked about that. The person, well, let's talk a little more. The person down at the front gate, I think you said, answers the phones?
Yes.
And that's on a regular little handset phone, is that correct?
Yes.
You just forward the calls from there?
Yes.
The person at the front gate also has the responsibility of letting people in and out?
Authorized persons only.
Alright, now, you mentioned mobile. What does mobile mean?
Mobile patrol is a truck that patrols the property. We also patrol about 3 miles of the front perimeter as well. They patrol the property and make sure we don't have trespassers, that our employees are safe, there are no other hazardous conditions going on. We also respond to alarm calls on the property. They also have the duties of locking up certain buildings and securing the ranch at a certain hour.
Let's talk about patrolling the front of the property. Does that mean going out on Figueroa Mountain Road?
Yes.
And why do you do that?
Well, occasionally we find vehicles that are parked outside of our fence line. And that would be an indication that perhaps we have a person who's jumped the fence and might be on property.
Now, part of the fence is just a split rail fence, is that correct, in the front?
Yes, approximately a half a mile of it is just your typical split rail fencing.
So it's not a wire mesh fence?
No.
And is it fairly easy for people to go through that fence?
Through or over.
Now, there are parts of this ranch. How big is the ranch?
The ranch is 2,700 acres, or approximately 5 square miles.
Alright, and is there any kind of a commercial operation on the ranch?
Yes.
What is that?
We have cattle on the ranch.
Alright, is that something you have your own cattle, Michael Jackson's cattle?
No, part of the property is.
I'm going to object as immaterial and irrelevant.
That has to do with the fencing.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes, it's leased by a rancher who has cattle on the property.
Alright, and are there parts of the property that are fenced to keep the cattle in?
Correct.
And there are parts of the property that are fenced to keep the cattle out, I take it?
Correct.
When you go into Mr. Jackson's home area, let us say, do you have a term for that,
I would say beyond the arched gateway, we call it the main house area.
And the arched gateway, is that the golden gates?
The golden gates.
The black gates with gold on them? Alright, now, is there fencing designed to keep people on the ranch so that they cannot get off?
No.
The golden gate that you described, does that automatically open if you approach it?
You would have to approach it by a vehicle, with a vehicle.
Okay. If you have a vehicle, it automatically opens.
Yes.
There's no requirement that you ask anybody or push buttons or anything else, right?
No. There's also a way to go around the gate as well, on foot.
Okay, we're going to get to that. But as far as the cars,
Okay.
that's all right. As far as cars are concerned, whether you are coming in or you are going out, if you just pull up, it trips a sensor and the gates automatically open, correct?
Right. Depending on the size of the vehicle, it senses the weight or the metal. And a golf cart could open it, could activate it, as well as a quad runner.
And in fact, golf carts and quad runners do go through that gate, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, you said you can also walk around the gate, is that right?
Yes.
Is there any kind of a locked fence that you have to get permission to go through to go past that gate?
No.
Alright, so you said the mobile. Right now it's a little pickup truck, is that correct?
Yes, a Ford.
I'm sorry?
A Ford Ranger.
And over the years it's been a different type of vehicle, I would take it?
Mostly that, though.
Mostly a small Ford pickup?
We did have a Nissan as well.
Some kind of pickup truck, right?
Yes.
Besides patrolling from time to time Figueroa Mountain Road to see if there are vehicles or possible intruders, does the mobile also patrol within the ranch?
Yes.
And just tell us generally where the mobile unit would go.
Well, the ranch has two main roads that loop throughout the property, and they meet about a quarter-mile from the front gate. From that point to the main residence is another quarter-mile. So we would patrol that entire area. So we would do a loop approximately of about 5 miles starting from the house security office to the furthest part of the ranch, back out to the front road and back.
Alright, now, you say, the furthest part of the ranch. Do you go up past the theater into the zoo area?
Yes, the furthest point would be the train barn or another area where we have a stockpile of manure, compost, gravel and sand.
Alright, now, if you have two other people on duty, you said one might be a supervisor and then you'd have another security officer, is that correct?
Yes.
What would they do? We've got the front gate person who stays at the front gate. You've got mobile. What would the other two people be doing on a typical shift?
We always have someone located at the main house.
Located at the main house, would be sitting in the security house at the end or walking around or both?
Both.
And what does the person do who's there at the main house? Can you describe what their duties would generally be? And they differ at night and daytime, you can make that distinction.
Generally what they do is they secure. They have the responsibility of securing that area, which means doing a foot patrol around the house, which includes the main residence, the rec room, the guest units, and as far away as maybe another quarter-mile walking, if it's necessary. They also accommodate guests' requests. If, something's needed, they assist the house staff as well.
So if somebody calls and says, I'd like to go into the theater and the theater is locked, is that something that security might take care of?
Yes.
And if a guest calls and requests some sort of refreshments, what would? Just tell me what happens. Somebody says, we want lunch. It's lunchtime. Can we please have lunch? What would you do?
We would call the kitchen and let them know the guests are ready for lunch.
Now, you said, call. Do you have radios?
Yes.
And what kind of radios do you have? Not the brand, but, does it hit a repeater or what?
Yes, it hits a repeater. We also have radio to radio within a mile distance.
Alright.
We have 2 channels.
So one channel goes off a repeater somewhere on a hill, and you're able to make communication that way?
Yes.
And then you can do the car-to-car?
Yes.
Alright, now, are the radios used just by security or by other departments?
No, most of the staff carries radios.
And they all have the 2 channels, the same 2 channels?
No, we have 2 separate channels. We have a channel strictly for security and fire and the remainder of the staff operates off another channel.
So you have 2 main channels off the repeater and then one car-to-car, or station-to-station.
Sure.
Okay, Is security often called for the purpose of arranging? We talked about lunch. Could security get a call about lunch, for instance?
Yes.
And then you would then forward that to housekeeping or to the cook.
Yes. They would either come into our office and request it, if they wanted it somewhere different than the kitchen. A lot of our guests know that they can call the front gate and make a request from there, and then the front gate would dispatch whoever is appropriate to fulfill that request.
So the guests would call the phone number?
Yes.
All right.
All right, counsel.